Right, word of warning, there's a big old twist here because we're putting forward one player that every team needs to sell in January. But this is a graph of every player's market value, which will rise with every team that we work through, which means, Wolves fans, you're not going to be last this time. Get in! This video includes the £18 million asset that needs to leave Liverpool, the £37 million asset that Manchester City could get rid of, and the £45 million player that Manchester United just can't fit into their team. By the way, all these valuations come from Transfer Market, who I think are fantastic, but if you are annoyed, take it up with them. But don't, because, you know, it's 2025, the year of not being a dick. Okay? Right, let's begin. 3 cheers for Transfer Market. Just trying to claw it back now. Okay, Fulham. Rodrigo Muniz and Raul Jimenez have been fantastic for Fulham this season. Absolutely fantastic in tandem, actually. Sort of one starts, then you bring on Muniz, he scores the winner, and you beat Chelsea. They might even go out and buy another striker to add to this in January, but one man has become forgotten at Fulham this season. I actually forgot he even played for them, to be honest. This season, he's been on the bench a few times, but has only played 10 minutes of football for Fulham. And with him being 29, I just think it's unlikely that his value will rise anytime soon. And with all these factors considered, I think Carlos Vinicius, or Vinicius, should be moved on this January. Now, let me start off with this very crucial point, because I don't think Ipswich need to get rid of anyone in particular, because this group of players have served Kieran McKenna so well over the last 2 years. However, due to them now being in the Premier League, some players aren't going to be up to it, and I think there's an opportunity here to sell some of them at a premium to the top half Championship clubs who are looking to get themselves into the Premier League, and offering them players that have gone there, been there, done it, and been incredibly valuable in a team that has been promoted, and thus raising very crucial and decent funds off the back of that. And one player who fits that criteria for me is Wes Burns. Brilliant in the Championship last season, and definitely would have suitors that would pay a nice price for him. Ruven Nistelrooy is a fascinating one. Look, no doubt he's going to want to put his stamp on this Leicester team, and also I believe he's a manager that would, if Leicester City went down and he was able to survive, I think he would want to still be the manager of that club in the Championship and get them back up, because he is at the early stages of his career. And so, as much as it comes down to bringing players in, it also means moving some players that you don't think have a long-term future at the club. And so far, he's used Hamza Chowdhury and James Justin at right back, and they've both been quite good there. But Leicester have got themselves another right back who has had his injury problems. And now at 31, it doesn't look like these problems are going to go away, and they haven't gone away really for some time. So I think moving Ricardo Pereira on is something that Leicester will definitely look to do, and because there is a good player in there, it's one that you could get some money or sneak some money out of a team while shaking hands and saying, look, you've given us everything, but maybe it's just time we part ways. Because as we always say, my good friend Kweku says, if you ain't fit, you ain't it. And Pereira just seems to keep having those problems. Insert Paul Rudd on Hot Ones GIF, or GIF, whatever you want to call it, meme. Because Wolves fans, look at us at the start of a video. I know. Listen, there was no way I was going to be putting forward a defender in here, because Wolves are running so short on those right now, to the point where players have to be played out of position. But what they do have is an abundance of attacking players. Recently, they've turned their attentions to purchasing younger players that can develop and turn into valuable assets. A dangerous game, but Pereira has been getting a bit of a song out of the team at the moment, which is obviously it's a huge relief to all Wolves fans. But one player who doesn't fit this bill, in my opinion, bit like Pereira, is Pablo Sarabia. He's had his injury struggles this season, which has only led to him playing a handful of matches, and with him being 32, I can see Wolves moving him on to allow the younger players more game time when Sarabia isn't affecting the game as much as maybe they wanted him to, or as well as he has in the past. Sticking in the Midlands, I think it's the Midlands. I know there's different bits and they get a bit arsey about it. But anyway, Aston Villa, this was a tough choice. But I think that this sale would make a lot of sense for Aston Villa when it comes to rejuvenating the squad and bringing the age profile down in a certain position. So Villa have got some great centre-backs. But a minor issue that I encountered when I was having a look was that they are mostly either in their prime or have surpassed the age of 30, meaning bringing in a younger centre-back could be a smart move. But you've got to sell someone. So who should they sell? Well, personally, I think selling this player makes a lot of sense. He's English, 31, and has a contract until 2026, meaning there's some sell-on value there. And I know Aston Villa fans love him, and I know Aston Villa fans might not be happy with me saying this, but you've got to be smart financially with your club, and I think clubs will be willing to pay for a proven Premier League centre-back. So with this logic, and with my heart taken out and put to the side going, don't do it, I'm going for Tyrone Mings. I'm sorry. It's just a video. Now, this next one is a big shame. I mean, they're all a big shame. I don't want anyone losing their job. But hopefully they won't. Hopefully they get another club and thrive in life. But for this next one, when he joined, I had a lot of hope for him as he had all the tools to become a great Premier League player. He went out on loan last season, and I thought that it would be the making of him. And for a while, I thought it would hold him in good stead for this season after featuring 20 times in La Liga for Real Sociedad last season. But after the arrival of Calafiori, it feels like Kieran Tierney is now the fifth choice left back. There's been a lot of talk about him moving to Celtic, and I think if that happens, and it's one that works for both parties, and financially it's not going to hurt Celtic, I guess you've got to be clever with the contract there. I think it's a really, really good move for them, and from Arsenal's point of view, it's something that needs to be done, because with Calafiori, Timber, Zinchenko and Miles Skelly all ahead of him now, and with his contract expiring in the summer, it makes a lot of sense for Arsenal to cash in on Kieran Tierney in January, for him and the club. Now, I'm sorry to say this, Southampton fans, but I think there might be a likelihood that you might go down this season. I actually think the odds are pretty high. And as is the case with teams threatened by relegation, the January beforehand can often be crucial and provide shoots of hope, or lead to more despair down the road, like last time when you went down, you spent all the money on Owachu. He was coming at you, thought it was going to go well, didn't. Anyway, either in buying your way out of trouble, that can be a solution, or by ensuring that some high earners are moved on, learning from previous experiences. Now, the player that we're putting forward here was actually purchased before they went down the last time. And when Southampton suffered relegation, they were forced to loan him out for a season. This probably means that he won't be involved next season if Southampton go down, meaning moving him on in January makes sense. And thus, Paul Onuachu is going to be coming at you. Someone. Or should be. Paul. That could be you. Bournemouth. And Bournemouth are a fascinating one. When you're a team on the way up, it's hard to say goodbye. It's hard to stomach selling anybody because they're all so brilliant, aren't they? One must beware hubris. And the reality is they need to sell players to take them to the next step. That is what the teams that aren't seen as big as the others stick around, because they sell these great assets that they've found, nurtured. And look at Brighton and the squad that they've been able to continue to build. It's because they've been able to sell. Selling's good. And Bournemouth have a lot of players that would be considered to be in their primes of their careers, or even just before it. And this is a great thing, because selling these players allows Bournemouth to not only make profit, but it also allows them to buy a younger replacement for more money than they would have been able to otherwise, which they would also be able to make a profit on down the line should everything go to plan. We've all played Football Manager! And that's how it works. And Bournemouth have got it right. They were right to sell Solanke. And Bournemouth paid around $30 million for this player back in 2019. And he's been great for them. Absolutely fantastic. But he's now 28. And it is a great opportunity to maybe sell him on for $20 million. Maybe a tiny bit more. Maybe not. Let me know in the comments down below. Around that mark for sure. Whilst also reinvesting that money into a younger replacement. And with this considered, I've gone for Philip Billing. Right, Brentford are a club that are fantastic at selling their talent at the right time, which often means it looks strange from the outside looking in. However, when they sell a player, they already have a short list of players that stylistically or profile-wise match up perfectly to the player that they've just sold. So when I say that they should sell their club captain, there's a reason behind it. Firstly, Christian Norgard is now 30 years old. Secondly, his contract is up in the summer. And finally, despite being 30, there will definitely be interest in his services either in January or in the summer. Selling him in January to get some money for him and bringing in a younger alternative would be a very wise move for Brentford, in my opinion, despite him being the club captain and so crucial in this team. But we've said that before about Brentford, and they've been able to find the answers. And they can again. And for the right club, it could be an absolute gem for them. A bit of a win-win for both sides. A bit like a Joachim Andersen kind of move. Yeah, he's a little bit older, but yeah, you're getting a great player. That kind of vibe. Now, it's rare that I say that a new signing needs to leave, because in most instances, they just need time to settle and begin to fully kick on. And that could be the case here. But this player has been pretty poor for me, and I'm not too sure on where the best fit is for him in the team. I think there's a bit of an experiment that's gone on and it's not really worked. And despite being a new signing, he was actually a free transfer, meaning any money that Palace would get for him would be profit. And it's for this reason specifically, actually, because I want to give players a chance, that I think that they'd be better off moving on Daichi Kamada and looking to reinvest it elsewhere. There's no doubt in my mind, one, a Premier League team, but certainly the Bundesliga and certainly a top 5 league team would want his services. Newcastle were great in December, and a lot of that's come from players stepping up. One player who has been absent in all of it, however, is Joel Almiron. With Jacob Murphy showing great form, actually, Almiron has been used very sparingly. I also think Newcastle may look to add depth to the right-wing position, either in January or in the summer. It's actually an area where I think, look, that starting position is there and up for grabs and has been for too long. And that would mean that Almiron is pushed further down the pecking order. And due to the fact that he's turning 31 in February as well, I think selling him is the correct choice for Newcastle, despite the fee maybe not being the biggest. One thing I like about Enzo Maresca is the fact that he made the decision early on who his players were and who was surplus to requirements. And this player definitely falls into that category. He's only played 45 minutes of first-team football this season, which came in the EFL Cup against Barrow. However, he's an England international who was bought for 50 million in 2020. With him being 28, I think a lot of clubs will be interested in him this January, and a move away is the smart choice for everyone. Ben Chilwell needs to leave Chelsea this January. Question for fans of Chelsea or any club that might want him: how much would you want to pay for him when you know he has had those problems with injuries? Let me know in the comments down below. Brighton have some of the best depth in the Premier League, but that does come at a cost for some players. There are a few Brighton players that would walk into a lot of Premier League sides, but their minutes have been few and far between this season. And Evan Ferguson is one. But I think he'll leave on loan rather than permanently, because I think Brighton still believe in him. But this player that we are going to put forward, I think, could leave on a permanent. Despite being without a goal in the last 18 months for Brighton, I think he's got real talent. And if a club is willing to play him every week, I think he could become somewhat of a superstar. But he needs to leave Brighton for this. And Brighton could probably get 20 million plus for him too, which is a win-win for both the player and the club. So, for that reason, I've gone for Julio Enciso. He's a lovely little player, and I want to see him in the Premier League. Not sure if that'll happen, but I just want to see him playing, man. So, despite having new owners, Everton still need to be smart in the transfer window due to the PSR rules, and that starts by selling players. And many will say that this is one of their best players, but the stats just really don't back it up in terms of goal scoring numbers. There is a sort of ticking time bomb here, though, because Everton have 8 first-team players all out of contract in the summer, and then 3 players on loan who would also be leaving the club as well. And one of these players with a contract expiring is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, DCL if you're friends with him. And he's probably the player who would have the most interest in January. Selling your striker isn't something you always want to do, of course, but in this case, it feels like Everton need to do it just to ensure that they get some money out of him rather than letting him go for free, which would be just bad business, right? So when you're at the top of the table, selling players isn't really at the top of your priority list, especially when you haven't brought any players in the summer. But for this player, for him himself, I think it would be smart for them to move on whilst also being beneficial for someone else's career. You've got Georgi Mabadashvili coming to Liverpool in 2025 and Alisson with a contract until 2027. So it means Kelleher will likely become third choice. It just sounds mad. And his stock is so high right now that by selling him in January, it makes sense for the club, even if it means coping without him for the second half of the season. I get it's a risk, but with his stock so high and a couple of teams needing quality goalkeepers, it might be a smart move. Buy low, sell high, they say, don't they? Now, Chris Wood has been the guy for Forest this season, alongside the impeccable defending Forest have displayed, and a tenacious midfield, Elliot Anderson in particular. I bloody love you. But last season, Wood wasn't even first choice. In fact, Taiwo Awoniyi looked like a real gem up front for them. But due to the form of Wood, yeah, it sounds like a euphemism, it's not, Awoniyi has fallen out of favour. But, in my opinion, there's a player in there, and therefore, no doubt in my mind that there would be so much interest in his services. I also think Forest could get 10, 50 million if there was Premier League interest. I nearly said maybe more. Forest fans, talk to me. How much? How much do you want? Huh? because his goals per 90 over his career, especially his Premier League career, have been very, very impressive. Right, next up. Personally, I didn't really want to put this guy in because I don't think he's that bad of a defender. And he's shown how good he can be in a low block, which is crucial here, with his country. And showed it at the Euros. But that isn't really what he needs to be great at when it comes to the demands of handball. And moving this player on could open the door for purchasing a centre-back. I think that's the caveat here. If you're going to sell, you need to get another player in because there aren't that many centre-backs at Tottenham at the moment. But finding one that is better suited to being an understudy to Christian Romero, I think would be a good shout. And I really like Dragusin, but I think he'd work a lot better in a different system. And for that reason, I think he's got to go. Right, when I looked into this one, I was surprised how West Ham fans felt. And that they aren't keen on this player anymore. And actually, they aren't against him leaving at all, or the thought of it at least. But when I watched a few of West Ham's matches recently, I kind of understood it a bit more. And I was then left with no choice but to include him in this video because there's big bucks to be made here. There has been a bit of a circus around this player as well at different times as well, which may have led to his head not being in the right place and himself needing that move away. So, for these reasons, I've gone for Lucas Paquetá. Now, Man City need a squad revamp ASAP, or in January, if they are to get anywhere near a title. Not going to happen, but even a trophy in general. They need to overhaul the squad. The problem is that doing it in January, it's always going to be difficult, and you're going to have to pay too much, and you're kind of under a barrel a little bit. So to sell a player, you need some suitors to be interested, and despite no goals for almost 50 matches, I think this player would still have a lot of interest and would drum up a fee of at least £50 million. He's been linked with Tottenham recently, and that's a move that I'd love to see. And so for this reason, I think Jack Grealish is the player that Manchester City should sell. Now, there are so many players that I expect to be on Ruben Amorim's chopping block. Can we get that on Grok, on X, please? That's right, Ruben Amorim's chopping block this January. Now, your guess is as good as mine as to how many players will actually be sold. But one player who looks like he will finally leave Manchester United, being dropped for the Manchester derby, was one moment where it became incredibly clear that he was on his way. But when he was an unused sub against Newcastle, it just really cemented the fact that he isn't in Amorim's plans and will now leave. My question with Marcus Rashford is, however, where will he go? Fortunately, I've answered that question in a video on my second channel, brand new channel called More James Allcott, and you can watch that video right here.